What's up, you guys? SlimXTeamSymmetry here to bring you guys the next episode of The Good, the Bad, and the Yu-Gi-Oh! And we are here to do it on Heroes as it was requested. Now, I know a lot of people have been requesting GBs, GKs, and other decks. The reason why I'm holding off on doing those, there's a couple reasons. Number one, they're not really topping that many events. Number two, I have not found builds that I feel are really that consistent to where I could actually use a template. But I feel for those two decks, I can just do kind of an outline of the deck. And also, I'm still learning a couple things about GBs because I feel GBs have a potential coming back. It just depends on if Test Tiger and Prisma is the way to go, or if standard GBs with just like a bajillion traps is the way to go. It all depends because the way the format's shaping out, it seems that GBs would have a hard time against decks like Water and other decks like that, but if they have Chariot and Protection, they should be able to get around stuff since Water can only pop through their effects, and if you Chariot, you're kind of in a good position. But more on to what we're here to do today. We're here to talk about Heroes. This build that you see here is just the one that I got from my regionals. I got first place. Other than that, I've said many times, these are not deck profiles. These are just the deck so that you can see like some of the main cards. And we're just going to get into what makes the deck really good. So, of course, your ace card is Stratos. Whatever you can do to get Stratos to go off first turn is crucial. You have two E-calls, and you have a reinforcement of the army. Those are your ways to search for Stratos. Plus, you have your pot of dualities to dig deeper in order to get to Stratos. So I feel that you have multiple ways to get to Stratos, and that if you can get Stratos on the board turn 1, use its effect to search out an Alias, depending on your build, if you run Bubble Man or Alias. Alias is normally what you search for, because that way it's +1. You have another monster in your hand, and if you happen to have a Gemini Spark in your hand, you have combos with Alias. I think that's really good. Other things that make the deck really good is that you do have 3 Alias. Alias being a 1900 beater that's unaffected by cards like Fiendish Chain is really cool. Plus, Alias has the ability to dodge cards like D-Prison, Bottomless, other cards like that. When you have Gemini Sparks, you guys already know, you tribute it, you draw a card, it's really good. Really good against decks like Dino Rabbit. When they bring out the 2 guys, you can always just Gemini Spark one of them to prevent them from XYZ summoning. There's just a lot of synergy this deck has, and I feel that Gemini Sparks is good. This build here only ran 2, only because sometimes 3 is a little clumpy. Depends. Usually you would have only 3 targets for 3 sparks, so sometimes it's better to run 2. It's all player preference, though. Other things this deck runs, this build chose to run 3 Thunder King, but Thunder King I feel is like a staple in Heroes because not only does it help make the Shining, but it's also good against mostly the entire meta. It hurts decks like Water, decks like Rabbit, decks like Prophecy, decks, just pretty much every deck in the format gets hurt by this. The only thing is you never want to summon this until you use your search cards, since Thunder King would actually shut that down. So I feel that cards like Thunder King are just really solid in the main board. Other cards of decks can run, some variants do run Cyber Dragon, some variants do main deck Fossil Dyna. I feel Angel Flores is the real hero expert. He has won 3 YCSs with variants of heroes. His latest build was a 42 card deck that ran main deck Fossil Dyna, main deck Gores, Honest, and a main 2 Karkards. What's interesting, I'll actually bring up Karkard because a lot of people are wondering, you know, how good is Karkard in the deck? Karkard, it just depends on like how you open. I feel that Karkard can add a lot of synergy to the deck because you can open a lot of back row since you run a ton of traps. Set them, summon Karkard, get a +1 because it's like a pot of greed, and you're pretty much set for your turn. Sometimes you can draw on your E-calls, your Thunder Kings, whatever, so that you have a solid play next turn. I feel that Karkard can add a lot of synergy to the deck. If you look in the OCG, all their hero decks run 2 to 3 Karkard. I think it just depends on player preference. Like, this card isn't necessary, but it just adds a lot to the deck, kind of like it did to Inzektor. So I feel that Karkard is just player preference, and it does add a lot. Other things that are good about this deck is that it's basically all beat sticks. Like, if you look at it, aside from different variants, you have 1900 Thunder Kings, 1900 Alias, Stratos is 1800. You can use Bubble Man, but Bubble Man is mainly used to XYZ summon into your Blade Armor, your Excalibur, you know, your other rank 4s. You also have the ability to make Shockmaster. That's really good. I feel that adds a lot more what's the word? A lot more not creativity, but a lot more control to the deck. I feel the deck's very control based since you have your +1 in Stratos, your summoning of Alias, your protection through Gemini Spark. You have just a lot of synergy that the deck can do. Other things that make the deck really good, of course, is Miracle Fusion. Miracle Fusion, I think, is broken. I think Miracle Fusion is one of the best cards in the deck. You can top deck it and be in a winning position, being able to make Shining, 0, Great Tornado, depending whatever your graveyard or field is. This card just adds like so much power to the deck. It's so powerful, bringing out a 3200 Shining to run over pretty much everything. Very hard card to get around if you don't have a Deep Prison or Bottomless or a warning for the Miracle Fusion. Just feel that Miracle Fusion is just great in the deck. Also, depending on your build, if you main deck Super Poly, this card is like unstoppable. This card is ridiculous. The only thing I know that hurts Super Poly is Defissure and Macro, only because the materials have to go to grave, so Super Poly actually cannot be activated. I found that out when I was playing at Locals. I played against a hero deck, ended up winning because I was maining DeFi in the same Rabbit deck I took to Seattle, and I happened to have DeFi, and he tried to Super Poly me. You know, I called the judge just to verify, and I actually was right. You could not Super Poly, so that was really interesting. But aside from that, I think Super Poly is just an absolutely amazing card. It answers the entire meta. It cannot be negated, so Lagia, Dolka, gone with this single card. Discard a card and, you know, just make Nova Master or whatever else. One thing I'd say the only drawback to this is you do have to discard one card. However, you can discard a hero or a target from Miracle Fusion and just set up your plays from there. So there is a lot of synergy and control with all these cards. So I feel that's really effective this format. And I'd say the last thing that makes it really good is just you run a ridiculous amount of back rows, so you do feel kind of unopposed. Starlight Road helps in those situations, and people would say, why would you main deck Gores? You know, sometimes you just don't have those plays where you can set all this back row freely, so sometimes you want to bluff your opponent. Sometimes dropping Gores is just what you need to win. Gores is not expected in a deck like this, so when you do run Gores, it does have that surprise factor. But I feel that's what's good about the deck. The deck is pretty fast, it's very control based, and you have just big monsters. 1900 beaters every turn is just something that's very hard for your opponent to go against. Now what's bad about the deck? I guess what's bad about the deck is it's not as effective, I would say, as it used to be. Heroes, you know, do well, but they do lose to decks like Water, they lose to decks like Insectors, they lose to a lot of other decks. I feel that the only out they really have to Insectors, aside from the obvious, the Warning, the Gemini Sparks, the Compulse, all the Torrentials, is their ability to make Escuriato with Super Poly. That was one thing that really helped them against Dark World and Insectors, because before then they didn't have a Dark Hero, so they couldn't get past Insectors any other way aside from their normal removal. So I feel that the inclusion of Escuriato became very crucial to them winning against this deck and against Dark World, since Dark World just summons Grapha like every turn. So I feel that added a lot of synergy to the deck. I guess the other things that can make the deck bad is that you do run a low amount of monsters, so sometimes you will open those hands where you don't have like an E-Call or a Rhoda or a Duality, which are your only ways to search through your deck. So I feel that a low amount of monsters can hurt you, but I feel that a lot of decks run low amounts of monsters, so it just depends on like what card you run to get to the card you need. And I'd say, I guess, like the last thing that can maybe hurt this deck, I would say, is cards like Deep Prison and Bottomless, because only on the fusions does it really hurt. I feel that when they go Miracle Fusion, the opponent will be like, oh crap, and then they'll flip a Bottomless, or they'll flip a Compulse, or a Deep Prison to the attack. That does hurt because you don't get your materials back for Shining, but I feel outside of that, there's not many things that are bad about this deck. I would say that the format just kind of calls for where you need to have like a more, like, other decks can outspeed it. I feel Water completely outspeeds it. Rabbit has kind of an interesting match against it, because Rabbit would have to have the control of Lagia and be able to dodge Super Poly, which the only way you can is if you have Defissure or Macro. And I mean, if you don't have those, like, they're just going to Super Poly away your Lagia or Dolka, and then you'll lose your Lagia or Dolka, and then in order to get rid of it, you'll have to use another back row. So I feel that they do have a pretty solid Dino Rabbit match. Insectors, like I said, do hurt them a little bit. It just depends on like what they play against. I feel that that's what makes them bad. I wouldn't even say the deck is bad at all. I would say the deck just it might not be the right format for it, but I feel that the deck has to have potential if in the OCG it's topping left and right. This deck, Water, and decks like Insectors and other decks like that are always topping the OCG, so I feel that there's always a reason why the deck does well. So that's pretty much it on why the deck, what's bad about it. There's not many bad things I can say about Heroes. I think Heroes are just a solid archetype. They need more support, in the sense that they already have all the support that they could possibly need. They just have to build the right number of support cards. Like, do you run 2 or 3 Miracle Fusions? Do you run 2 Super Polys in the main? Do you run 1 in the main? What are your trap lineups? Do you run Bottomless? Do you run Mirror Force? You know, what exactly do you run? Do you run 1 Starlight Road or 2? It all depends on player preference. So I feel that that's what can give the deck its good and its bad side. And I guess the broken plays of the deck really come through Miracle Fusion and Super Polymerization, because these 2 cards literally just bring out big monsters. The ability to bring out big Shinings and big, you know, Absolute Zero is really broken against most of the meta. It's good against just like a lot of other decks. I think the ability to just pretty much steal every element these days really makes the deck solid and makes it a good choice no matter what event you're entering to. I don't think there's a deck that fully outright will just beat Heroes, aside from maybe a Troll deck, but aside from that, I feel the deck's pretty solid. But let me know what you guys think. I want to do this one for you guys. Just want to kind of analyze the deck. like I said, there'll always be different variants of heroes. Variants that include card D and include other cards like that. And some people will say, you know, you should always run 3 Gemini Spark. It all depends on, can you recycle your alias? Like, do you run Hero Blast? There's no Hero Blast in this build. Hero Blast is kind of iffy. Like, it is a good card, but you do have to have an alias engraved. So I feel that that can be a little bit of a problem. But aside from that, the deck's pretty solid. But, you know, comment below what you guys think. Do you guys like heroes? Do you not like heroes? Do you think that there's anything coming out that will make them good again? Like, everyone's talking about Excalibur, champions and all that, and how you can splash them in heroes. I really don't know since I don't play heroes, but I feel that this build and builds like Bubble Beat, OTK add the potential. Like, a lot of people don't know like about Bubble Beat, but Bubble Beat's really simple. You know, you run your alias, your Bubble Man. You know, you run Warrior Returning Alive, Hero Lives. Like, there's so many builds you can run of heroes. I just wanted to do a really standard one because I feel the standard ones are the ones that do the best. Like, Hero Stun, Hero Beat is the way to go because they're just big monsters and they just control the whole tempo of the game. So I feel that that's really important. But like I said, just comment below what you guys think. You know, 150, 200 plus likes for the next episode. I really am going to try to make it GBs or GKs before I get into like any other decks. I'm going to try and build a GB template, a very simple one for you guys to go off of for when I do the one on GBs. I know a lot of people want to see it. I just really want to make sure that that video makes sense because I know that's going to be a really highly anticipated video and I want it to be beneficial for everyone who watches it, especially people who, like myself, have run GBs in the past. So just let me know what you guys think, what you guys want to see on the next episode, and yeah, that's pretty much it, you guys. I hope you enjoyed the episode. So that's all I got to say, you guys. Thank you for watching.